When Lirelei Thornwick saved that abandoned pup from certain death, she never imagined it would cost her everything she'd ever known, or that the Alpha King himself would one day kneel before her, claiming her as his destined mate, while her former packmates watched in stunned silence. The scent of antiseptic burns Lirelei's nostrils as she sits rigidly in the cold metal chair outside Alpha Draven Blackmore's office. Her hands tremble slightly in her lap, the Omega instincts she's fought her entire life screaming at her to submit, to apologize, to make herself smaller. But she won't. Not this time. The door opens with a sharp crack, and Beta Cassius Ironwell emerges, his lip curled in disgust. "The Alpha will see you now," he spits, stepping aside just enough for her to pass. His contempt radiates off him in waves, a familiar sensation that's followed Lirelei throughout her 23 years in the Shadowpine Pack. Alpha Draven sits behind his mahogany desk like a judge preparing to deliver a death sentence. His steel-gray eyes, once merely indifferent when they looked upon her, now burn with barely contained fury. The power radiating from him makes every Omega instinct in her body scream for submission. But Lirelei forces herself to meet his gaze. "Explain yourself," he growls, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Lirelei's throat feels dry, but she finds her voice. "The pup was dying, Alpha. Left at our borders, probably not even 2 months old. You couldn't just follow orders?" Draven's fist slams against the desk, making her flinch. "You were explicitly told that all unknown wolves found on our territory were to be reported immediately. Not rescued. Not brought into our territory. Reported. She was a baby," Lirelei whispers. Then stronger. "She was innocent. She was a security risk." Draven rises, his massive frame casting a shadow over her. That pup could have been planted by the Crimson Fang Pack, could have been carrying disease, could have been bait for a trap. But instead of following protocol, you and Omega decided you knew better than your Alpha. The word Omega lands like a physical blow. In the Shadowpine Pack, Omegas are barely tolerated, seen as necessary burdens rather than valued members. They're the ones who clean, who serve, who submit without question. They don't make decisions. They certainly don't defy direct orders. "Where is the pup now?" Draven's voice drops to a deadly whisper. Lirelei's heart pounds. "In the nursery wing. Luna Seraphina is furious that you involved her in your recklessness." Draven cuts her off. "Do you have any idea what you've cost this pack? The neighboring packs are already whispering that Shadowpine has gone soft, that we harbor strays and rogues, that our Alpha can't even control a single Omega." The shame burns in Lirelei's chest, but beneath it, a spark of defiance she's never felt before. The pup's name is Ember. She's healthy, strong, and she's just a child who needed help. "I won't apologize for having compassion." Silence stretches between them, thick and dangerous. Beta Cassius shifts behind her, his shock at her boldness palpable. No Omega speaks to an Alpha this way. Ever. Draven's eyes narrow to dangerous slits. "You won't apologize?" "It's not a question." "Very well. Since you believe your judgment supersedes mine, since you think the rules that govern this pack don't apply to you, you can test that theory elsewhere." The words hit her like ice water. "Alpha, please. You are hereby banished from the Shadowpine Pack, effective immediately." His voice carries the weight of Alpha command, each word settling into her bones like a curse. "You have until sunset to gather your belongings and leave our territory. If you're found within our borders after that, you'll be treated as a rogue." The world tilts around her. Banished, cast out. For an Omega, it's essentially a death sentence. Lone wolves rarely survive long, especially Omegas without pack protection. The other packs won't take her in, not when word spreads about why she was exiled. "And the pup?" she manages to ask through her shock. "Will be dealt with appropriately," Draven says coldly. Lirelei's blood turns to ice. She knows what dealt with appropriately means. Ember will be killed or abandoned again, left to die as she was meant to before Lirelei interfered. "You can't," she breathes. "She's innocent. She's just a baby. She's not our responsibility. Just as you are no longer our concern. Draven turns his back on her, a gesture of ultimate dismissal. Cassius, escort her out. Make sure everyone knows why she's being cast out. Let them see what happens when pack law is defied. As Beta Cassius grips her arm with bruising force, dragging her from the office, Lirelei feels something crack inside her chest. Not break crack. Like the first fissure in a dam before it bursts. They think casting her out will destroy her. They think she'll crawl away to die in shame and regret. They're wrong. 3 days of wandering the neutral territories between packlands have taught Lirelei harsh lessons about survival. Her feet are blistered, her clothes torn from thorns, and the meager supplies she managed to grab before her exile are nearly gone. But it's the howling in the distance that truly terrifies her rogue wolves. Hunting in packs, drawn by the scent of a lone omega, she's huddled beneath an overturned log when her old communication crystal buzzes against her chest, the enchanted stone flickering with urgent amber light. Only pack members can activate the emergency frequency, and Liralei's heart lurches. They wouldn't contact her unless something was desperately wrong. The voice that crackles through is barely recognizable. Mira Goldleaf, the pack's head nursemaid, sobbing so hard her words come in broken fragments. Lirelei, thank the moon you still have your crystal. I don't. I can't. Something's wrong with Ember. The pup. Lirelei's blood turns to ice. What's wrong? What did they do to her? She won't eat. Mira's voice cracks. Won't sleep. Just cries and cries, day and night. The pack healers say there's nothing medically wrong, but she's wasting away. She's calling for you, Lirelei. Even though she can't speak yet, she keeps making sounds that they sound like she's trying to say your name. Lirelei presses the crystal closer, her heart hammering. Where's Alpha Draven? Surely he left for the Continental Pack Summit yesterday morning. Won't be back for a week. Luna Serafina tried to comfort Ember, but Mira's voice drops to a whisper. The pup bit her. Drew blood. A pup bit the Luna. Lirelei, do you understand what that means? Lirelei does understand. In werewolf society, such an act from a pup indicates severe psychological trauma or something else entirely. Something that could mark Ember as dangerous in the eyes of the pack. They're talking about putting her down, Mira continues, her voice breaking completely. Beta Cassius says she's showing signs of rabidity or rogue behavior. He's calling for an emergency pack meeting tomorrow night. If you don't come back, the crystal goes dead, leaving Lirelei alone with her racing thoughts. Ember is dying without her. A 2-month-old pup who survived abandonment is now wasting away because she's been torn from the only person who showed her kindness. But going back means certain death. Lirelei was banished under Alpha Command. Entering pack territory again would mark her as a rogue to be killed on sight. Even if she somehow reached Ember, she'd never leave alive. She thinks of Ember's tiny hands grasping at her shirt that first day, the way the pup's breathing had steadied when Lirelei hummed lullabies. She thinks of those bright golden eyes that seemed far too knowing for such a young face. Then she thinks of Beta Cassius's cold voice discussing putting down a baby like a diseased animal. Lirelei rises from her hiding place, brushing dirt from her torn clothes. The howling in the distance grows closer, but she's no longer running from it. She's running towards something far more dangerous home. As she picks her way through the dark forest, following paths she's known since childhood, a strange warmth spreads through her chest. For the first time in her life, she's not acting from Omega submission or fear of punishment. She's acting from choice, from love, from a fierce protective instinct she never knew she possessed. The Shadowpine Pack thinks they broke her spirit with banishment. They think she'll slink away and die quietly, forgotten and unmourned. But they don't understand what they've actually done. They've freed her from the chains of pack hierarchy. They've stripped away everything she thought defined her pack membership, social position, safety, and in doing so, they've revealed something that was always there beneath the surface. They haven't destroyed Lirelei Thornwick. They've unleashed her. The Shadow Pine Pack nursery sits in darkness when Lirelei slips through the window she'd left unlatched years ago during her cleaning duties. Her heart pounds so loudly she's certain it will wake the entire compound, but the enchanted silence wards she helped maintain still muffle sound within these walls. Ember's cries guide her through the familiar corridors. The sound is heartbreaking, not the healthy wails of a hungry or uncomfortable pup, but the weak, desperate whimpers of a baby giving up hope. Mira sits beside Ember's crib, tears streaming down her weathered face. She looks up as Lirelei materializes from the shadows, relief and terror warring in her expression. "You came," Mira whispers. "I wasn't sure you'd risk it. I couldn't stay away." Lirelei approaches the crib, and her heart nearly breaks. Ember has lost weight in just 3 days, her tiny frame seeming to shrink into the blankets. But her golden eyes track to Lirelei immediately, and she lets out a sound that's unmistakably recognition. The moment Lirelei lifts her, Ember's cries cease entirely. The pup nuzzles into her neck, tiny fists grabbing at her shirt with desperate strength. "She hasn't stopped crying since you left," Mira says quietly. "The healers are baffled. Physically, she's perfect, but it's like she's grieving." "Pups can die from emotional trauma," Lirelei murmurs, rocking Ember gently. "Especially ones who've already been abandoned once." Mira nods, then glances toward the door nervously. "Lirelei, there's something else. Something I discovered while caring for her." She moves to a cabinet, withdrawing a small bundle wrapped in soft cloth. "These were sewn into her blanket when you found her." Inside the cloth are 3 items that make Lirelei's blood freeze. A silver pendant bearing the royal crest of the Northern Territories, a lock of pure white hair tied with golden thread, and a note written in elegant script. "To whoever finds my daughter," Lirelei reads aloud. "Her name is Ember Moonshadow. She is the rightful heir to the Northern Crown. I cannot protect her from those who would use her bloodline for war. Please keep her safe until she's old enough to claim her birthright." She bears the mark of the royal line. Signed, Queen Celeste Moonshadow. The implications crash over Lirelei like a tidal wave. Ember isn't just any abandoned pup. She's the missing princess everyone's been searching for, the heir to the most powerful werewolf kingdom in the world. "The mark," Mira whispers. "Look at her shoulder." Lirelei gently shifts Ember's tiny shirt, revealing a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon surrounded by stars. The legendary mark of the Moonshadow dynasty. Proof of royal blood that can't be faked or forged. "Dear Moon Goddess," Lirelei breathes. "Do you understand what this means?" Mira nods grimly. "The Northern Territories have been in chaos since Queen Celeste died and Princess Ember disappeared. King Kieran Nighthaven, the Queen's brother and Ember's uncle, has been searching everywhere for her. But if the wrong people learn her identity, they'll either kill her or use her as a political pawn," Lirelei finishes. "And if Alpha Draven discovers who she really is, he'll see an opportunity to gain power through her bloodline or eliminate a potential threat." Ember makes a soft, cooing sound against Lirelei's neck, completely unaware that her very existence could reshape the balance of power across all werewolf territories. "You have to take her away from here," Mira says urgently. "Tonight, before the pack meeting tomorrow." "Take her where?" Lirelei asks, though she's already reaching the same conclusion. "I'm a banished Omega with no pack, no resources, no connections. How can I protect a royal heir?" "You're the only one she trusts," Mira replies firmly. "Look at her. She's been dying without you, and now she's already breathing easier just being in your arms. There's a connection between you two that goes deeper than pack bonds." As if to prove the point, Ember's tiny hand curls around Lirelei's finger, and a strange warmth pulses between them. Not the electric shock of a mate bond, but something else. Something protective and fierce and unbreakable. "Promise me." Mira grabs Lirelei's free hand, her grip desperate. "Promise me you'll keep her safe. Not just from the Shadow Pine Pack, but from everyone who would use her. She deserves to grow up loved, protected, free to choose her own destiny when she's ready." Lirelei looks down at Ember, who gazes back with those impossibly knowing golden eyes. A royal pup, heir to a throne, abandoned by those who should have protected her, and now depending entirely on a banished Omega for survival. I promise, Lirelei whispers, and feels something fundamental shift in her soul. I'll protect her with my life. Dawn breaks gray and threatening as Lirelei prepares to flee with Ember, but the sound of approaching footsteps freezes her blood. Heavy boots on stone, moving with predatory purpose directly toward the nursery. Beta Cassius fills the doorway, his massive frame blocking any hope of escape. Behind him stand six-pack warriors, their eyes glowing amber with barely restrained violence. The scent of their aggression fills the small room, making Ember whimper against Lirelei's chest. Well, Cassius's voice drips with cruel satisfaction. The banished Omega returns to Steelpack property. How predictable. How predictable. She's not property, Lirelei says quietly, but her voice carries a strength that surprises even her. She's a child who needs protection. Cassius laughs, the sound harsh and grating. Protection? From a rogue who can't even protect herself? His eyes narrow as he studies Ember more closely. Though I admit, there's something unusual about this pup. The way she affects pack dynamics, the strange energy that radiates from her. Lirelei's heart hammers as she realizes he suspects something about Ember's true nature. She shifts slightly, trying to shield the royal birthmark from view. Here's what's going to happen, Cassius continues, stepping into the room. You're going to hand over the pup, submit to restraints, and await Alpha Draven's return for proper punishment. If you cooperate, your death will be quick. And if I don't cooperate? Cassius's smile turns predatory. Then we kill you both slowly. Your choice, Omega. The ultimatum hangs in the air like a blade. Lirelei can feel the warriors tensing, ready to spring if she makes any sudden movement. Ember's tiny fist grips her shirt tighter, as if sensing the danger surrounding them. But instead of the familiar surge of Omega submission that should make her bow her head and obey, Lirelei feels something else rising within her. A fierce, protective instinct that burns away fear and replaces it with iron determination. Actually, she says, straightening to her full height, I have a third option. Before anyone can react, Lirelei throws herself sideways toward the window, using her body to shield Ember from the impact as they crash through the glass. She hits the ground hard, pain shooting through her shoulder, but rolls to absorb the impact and protect the precious bundle in her arms. Howls of rage erupt from the nursery above, as Cassius and his warriors realize their prey has escaped. But Lirelei is already running, drawing on reserves of speed and agility she never knew she possessed. Seal the borders! Cassius's voice thunders across the compound. No one leaves the territory. Find them. Lirelei sprints through the forest paths of her childhood, Ember silent and still in her arms, as if understanding that their lives depend on stealth. Behind them, she can hear the thundering of paws as the warriors shift to wolf form, their hunt howls echoing through the trees. She has maybe a 10-minute head start before they track her scent. The border is 15 minutes away at her best speed. The math is simple and terrifying. That's when she hears it. The sound of an engine approaching fast on the access road that runs parallel to the forest. Without hesitation, Lirelei crashes through the undergrowth and stumbles onto the asphalt just as a sleek black motorcycle rounds the curve. The rider brakes hard, gravel spraying as the bike skids to a stop. When the helmet comes off, revealing sharp features and storm gray eyes, Lirelei's breath catches. Need a ride? The stranger asks, and there's something in his voice and authority that makes every instinct in her body recognize power. Hunt howls sound dangerously close now. Lirelei doesn't have time for caution or questions. Yes, she gasps, climbing onto the bike behind him, clutching Ember tightly. Please. The stranger doesn't ask for explanations or destinations. He simply guns the engine and rockets away from the Shadowpine territory as the first wolf warriors burst from the tree line, their howls of frustration fading behind them. As they speed through the dawn light, Lirelei realizes she's made her choice. Not between life and death, but between the safety of submission and the dangerous freedom of protecting what matters most. She chose Ember. She chose courage. And somehow, she feels like this mysterious stranger who appeared at exactly the right moment might be connected to both. The motorcycle finally stops at a roadside diner 50 miles from Shadowpine territory, tucked between rolling hills and morning mist. Liralay's legs shake as she climbs off, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Ember stirs in her arms, making soft sounds that could almost be purrs of contentment. Her mysterious rescuer removes his helmet, revealing features that make Liralay's breath catch. Sharp cheekbones, storm gray eyes, and an aura of barely contained power that screams alpha authority. But it's the small silver pin on his leather jacket that makes her heart stop the royal crest of the Northern Territories. "You're him," she whispers. "You're the Alpha King." Kieran Nighthaven studies her with those penetrating gray eyes, taking in her torn clothes, the protective way she holds Ember, the defiant tilt of her chin despite her obvious fear. "And you're the Omega who saved my niece," he says quietly. The words hit Liralay like a physical blow. "Your niece?" "Princess Ember Moonshadow, daughter of my sister, Queen Celeste." His voice carries a weight of grief and regret. "I've been searching for her for months, following every lead, every rumor. When my spies reported an Omega in the Shadowpine Pack had rescued an abandoned royal pup. You've been watching me. I've been hoping." Kieran's gaze softens as he looks at Ember, who regards him with those impossibly knowing golden eyes. "May I?" Liralay hesitates for a heartbeat, then carefully transfers Ember to her uncle's arms. The pup doesn't cry or resist instead. She reaches up to pat his face with tiny hands, and Kieran's controlled expression cracks completely. "She looks like Celeste," he murmurs, voice thick with emotion. Same eyes, same stubborn chin. He looks up at Liralay. "Thank you. For saving her, for protecting her, for choosing her safety over your own. Anyone would have." "No." Kieran's voice carries absolute certainty. "Most would have followed orders, avoided the consequences. You risked everything for a stranger's child. That takes a special kind of courage." They settle into a booth inside the diner, Kieran keeping Ember, while Liralay orders food with shaking hands. The normalcy of bacon and eggs feels surreal after the morning's chaos. "What happens now?" Liralay asks quietly. "You take her back to the Northern Territories, I suppose. Claim your rightful heir." Kieran's expression grows troubled. "It's not that simple. The royal court is divided, half want Ember found and crowned, half prefer me to remain as permanent king rather than regent. There are factions that would use her as a puppet ruler, or worse. Then keep her hidden until she's older." "Where?" Kieran interrupts. "I can't trust anyone at court. Too many political ambitions, too many ways a child can disappear permanently." He meets her eyes across the table. "She needs someone who's already proven they'll put her welfare above everything else." Understanding dawns slowly. "You want me to keep her. I want you to raise her," Kieran says carefully. "Not as her caretaker or governess, but as her mother. The only mother she's ever truly known." Liralay's heart pounds. "I'm just an Omega, a banished one at that. I have no pack, no resources, no way to—" "You'd have mine." The quiet certainty in his voice stops her protests cold. "My protection, my resources, my authority. A place in my court, if you want it. Or a safe haven far from politics where Ember can grow up happy and free. And in return? In return, you give her what I can't, unconditional love from someone who sees her as a child to be cherished, not a crown to be claimed." Ember chooses that moment to reach for Liralay, making soft, demanding sounds until Kieran transfers her back. The moment she's in Liralay's arms, the pup settles with a contented sigh, tiny hand fisting in her shirt. "She's already chosen," Kieran observes. "The question is whether you'll choose her back." Liralay thinks of everything she's giving up: the dream of finding a new pack, of someday being accepted somewhere, of living a simple, safe life. Then she looks down at Ember, who gazes up at her with complete trust and love. "Yes," she says simply. I choose her. I choose this. Something shifts in Kieran's expression: relief, gratitude, and something else she can't quite identify. Then you're under my protection now. Both of you. Anyone who threatens either of you threatens the crown. As if summoned by his words, the diner door chimes, and three familiar figures enter: Beta Cassius and two Shadowpine warriors, their eyes scanning the room with predatory intent. Liralay's blood turns to ice, but Kieran simply turns in his seat, radiating such pure alpha dominance that all three men freeze in the doorway. Gentlemen, he says pleasantly, though his voice carries enough authority to make them unconsciously bare their necks in submission. I believe you're trespassing on neutral territory while pursuing someone under royal protection. Cassius's face goes white as he recognizes the Alpha King. Your Majesty, we weren't aware. Now you are. Kieran's tone could freeze fire. I suggest you return to your territory and inform your Alpha that Princess Ember Moonshadow is exactly where she belongs with her chosen guardian, under my direct protection. The three men retreat without another word, practically tripping over themselves in their haste to escape. Liralay stares at Kieran in amazement. Just like that? Just like that? He confirms. You're free, Liralay Thornwick. Free from your old pack. Free from their judgment. Free to become whoever you choose to be. For the first time in her life, Liralay feels the weight of Omega submission lift from her shoulders entirely. She's not just protecting Ember anymore, she's claiming her own power, her own choices, her own destiny. The Northern Territory's royal palace rises before them, like something from a dream. Crystal spires reaching toward the sky, gardens that seem to glow with their own inner light, and walls that pulse with protective magic older than memory. But it's the crowd gathered in the grand courtyard that makes Liralay's stomach clench with anxiety. Dozens of richly dressed nobles wait in perfect formation, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. At their head stands a man whose resemblance to Kieran is unmistakable. Though where the Alpha King radiates controlled power, this man practically vibrates with ambition. My cousin, Prince Valerius, Kieran murmurs as their car glides to a stop. He's been managing affairs in my absence. The way he says managing suggests it's not entirely welcome management. Prince Valerius steps forward as they emerge from the vehicle, his smile sharp as a blade. Cousin, welcome home, though I confess surprise at your traveling companions. His gaze flicks dismissively over Liralay before settling on Ember with an intensity that makes her skin crawl. There's something calculating in his expression, as if he's seeing not a child but a chess piece. Princess Ember Moonshadow, Kieran announces formally, his voice carrying across the courtyard. Rightful heir to the Northern Crown, daughter of Queen Celeste, returned to claim her birthright. A murmur ripples through the assembled nobles. Some bow deeply, but others exchange meaningful glances that speak of shifting loyalties and political calculations. And her companion? Valerius's tone drips with disdain as he studies Liralay. Lady Liralay Thornwick, Kieran declares, and Liralay nearly staggers at the title. Guardian to the princess, granted sanctuary and protection under royal decree. Lady? A woman's voice cuts through the crowd, sharp with disbelief. She reeks of Omega. You're granting noble titles to common pack rejects now. Kieran's eyes flash dangerously, but before he can respond, Ember begins to fuss in Liralay's arms. The pup, overwhelmed by the crowd and strange scents, starts to cry the same heartbroken wails that nearly killed her during their separation. Immediately, the assembled nobles step back, covering their ears. But it's not just the volume of Ember's cries that affects them, there's something else. A resonance in her voice that seems to reach into their chests and squeeze. What is that? Someone whispers fearfully. She's just upset, Liralay says, automatically rocking and soothing the baby. New place, too many strangers. But her words are lost as Ember's cries intensify, and suddenly the great crystal windows of the palace begin to vibrate in harmony. Several nobles stumble, clutching their heads as if in pain. Royal voice, Valerius breathes, and there's genuine shock in his expression now. She's manifesting the royal voice at 18 months old. The royal voice, Lirelei has heard legends of it. A power unique to the Moonshadow bloodline that could command obedience from any werewolf, influence emotions, even shatter stone with the right tone. But it typically didn't manifest until adolescence, if at all. Shh, little star, Lirelei murmurs, pressing Ember close to her heart and humming a lullaby she remembers from her own childhood. You're safe. I'm here. Gradually, Ember's cries fade to hiccups, then silence. The moment she calms, the oppressive energy dissipates, leaving the courtyard in stunned quiet. Extraordinary, Valerius says slowly. The princess responds only to her. He can't quite bring himself to say Lirelei's name with respect, but there's new wariness in his voice. Perhaps, suggests an elderly woman with silver hair and cold eyes. The princess would be better served by proper noble guardians, trained in court etiquette, royal protocols. The princess stays with Lady Lirelei. Kieran interrupts firmly. That is not a request or a suggestion. It is a royal command. The old woman, Duchess Evangeline, if Lirelei remembers Kieran's briefings correctly, smiles thinly. Of course, Your Majesty. Though I hope this arrangement won't interfere with the princess's proper education and preparation for her eventual role. There's a threat buried in those polite words. These nobles see Ember as their path to power, and they see Lirelei as an obstacle to be removed. The princess will receive the finest education available, Kieran replies smoothly, under Lady Lirelei's oversight and protection. Naturally, Valerius says, though his smile doesn't reach his eyes. Though perhaps it would be wise to ensure Lady Lirelei understands the complexities of court life, the expectations placed upon those who serve the royal family. The emphasis on serve is deliberate and cutting. Despite Kieran's protection and title, they still see her as nothing more than a glorified nursemaid. But as Lirelei stands there, holding the most powerful child in the werewolf world while surrounded by nobles who would use that child for their own gain, she feels something crystallize inside her, not submission or intimidation, but fierce protective purpose. They can play their political games and scheme for power all they want. She doesn't need their respect or acceptance. She only needs to keep Ember safe, happy, and free to choose her own destiny when the time comes. And if that puts her at odds with every noble in the kingdom, so be it. I understand perfectly, she says quietly, meeting each hostile gaze in turn. The princess's well-being comes before all other considerations, including court politics. The challenge in her words is unmistakable, and she sees several nobles stiffen with offense. How refreshing, Duchess Evangeline murmurs. Such dedication. I'm sure we'll have many opportunities to discuss what's best for our dear princess. As they're finally escorted into the palace proper, Lirelei catches Kieran's eye. He nods almost imperceptibly. He sees the danger too, recognizes that this is only the beginning of a much larger battle. But for now, Ember is safe in her arms, and that's all that matters. The princess's suite in the palace is larger than Lirelei's entire childhood home, with a nursery that looks like it was designed by fairy tale architects. But it's the adjoining room that takes her breath away, spacious, elegant, with a view of the royal gardens and furnishings that probably cost more than most packs' annual budgets. This is temporary, Kieran says quietly as palace staff bustle around, unpacking the few belongings they'd managed to gather during their journey. Until we can determine the safest long-term arrangement, Lirelei nods, though she can't shake the feeling that temporary might be more permanent than either of them expects. Ember has settled into the luxurious nursery like she belongs there, already exploring her new surroundings with the fearless curiosity of a healthy toddler. The nobles don't trust me, Lirelei observes, watching through the window as several court members gather in the gardens below, their body language suggesting intense conversation. They don't trust anyone they can't control or buy, Kieran replies. You represent something they don't understand: loyalty without ambition. A soft knock interrupts them, and a young woman enters, carrying a tea service. She's beautiful in the way that court nobles always are perfectly styled. Expensive clothes, practiced grace, but her scent carries undertones of genuine nervousness. "Your Majesty," she says with a perfect curtsy, "I'm Lady Isadora Silvermoon, appointed as liaison to assist Lady Lirelei with court protocols." Kieran's expression tightens almost imperceptibly. Appointed by whom? Prince Valerius felt it would be wise to ensure Lady Lirelei has proper guidance during her adjustment period. Isadora's diplomatic smile doesn't quite hide the awkwardness of her position. So they're assigning her a babysitter. Lirelei almost admires the political maneuvering. They can't directly challenge Kieran's authority, so they'll work around it by offering help. "That's very thoughtful," Lirelei says mildly, accepting a cup of tea. "I'm sure Lady Isadora has valuable insights to share." Isadora looks relieved at the gracious response. But Kieran studies Lirelei with new interest. He's beginning to realize that the Omega who saved his niece might be more politically astute than anyone gave her credit for. Over the following days, the pattern becomes clear. Lirelei is welcomed nowhere and excluded from nothing, a careful balance that keeps her isolated while maintaining plausible deniability. Court functions include her but seat her at the lowest tables. Conversations halt when she approaches but resume with pointed comments about proper bloodlines and traditional values. Lady Isadora proves to be an unexpected ally, genuinely trying to help Lirelei navigate the complex social dynamics while subtly deflecting some of the more hostile maneuvers. Duchess Evangeline is hosting a reception tomorrow night, Isadora explains as they walk through the palace gardens, Ember contentedly babbling in her stroller. "All the noble families will attend. You'll be expected to make an appearance. To be displayed like a curiosity, you mean?" Isadora winces. "They want to see how you handle yourself under pressure. Whether you'll crack, say something they can use against you or the king. And if I don't attend, they'll claim you consider yourself above their society, which plays into their narrative about upstart commoners forgetting their place. It's a trap either way, and they all know it." But as they round a corner of the garden path, they find Kieran sitting on a marble bench, papers spread around him as he works in the afternoon sunlight. Ember immediately starts wiggling and reaching for him. "Uncle," Lirelei says, testing the informal address they'd agreed upon in public. Ember seems to think it's playtime, not work time. Kieran looks up with a smile that transforms his entire face, reaching for his niece with eager hands. She's absolutely right. These budget reports will still be boring in an hour. Watching them together, the powerful Alpha King making silly faces at a giggling toddler, Lirelei feels something warm and complicated unfurling in her chest. This isn't the political alliance she'd expected. It's beginning to feel like something much more dangerous. Like family. "The reception tomorrow," she says impulsively. "I need a favor." Kieran raises an eyebrow. "Name it. Dance with me. Early in the evening, before the political maneuvering gets too intense. Show them that I have your support." "You have more than my support," he says quietly, his eyes meeting hers over Ember's head. "You have my trust, my protection, and my gratitude." There's something in his voice that makes Lirelei's breath catch. A warmth that has nothing to do with royal obligation and everything to do with genuine connection. Lady Isadora clears her throat delicately. "I should mention the reception will be formal court dress. I took the liberty of arranging appropriate gowns for your approval." That evening, as Lirelei stands before the mirror in a dress that costs more than most people earn in a lifetime, she barely recognizes herself. The deep blue silk brings out her eyes, the elegant cut flatters her figure, and the Moonshadow family diamonds at her throat mark her as under royal protection. She looks like she belongs here, like she's worthy of the title Kieran granted her. But more importantly, as she watches Ember sleeping peacefully in the royal nursery, she realizes she's beginning to feel like she belongs here, not because of noble birth or political maneuvering, but because this is where Ember is safe and loved. And if protecting that requires her to play court politics and dance with kings, then she'll become the best political player they've ever seen. The royal reception unfolds exactly as Lirelei expected, a carefully choreographed display of wealth, power, and barely concealed political maneuvering. But what she didn't expect was how natural it would feel to have Kieran's hand on her waist as they moved through the opening dance, every eye in the ballroom tracking their every movement. "You're doing beautifully," he murmurs as they spin through a complex turn. "Half the court is terrified you'll somehow bewitch me into giving you real power. And the other half? Are terrified you already have." The dance ends with a flourish, and Kieran escorts her to the side of the ballroom where Lady Isadora waits with Ember in her arms. The toddler has been dressed in a tiny gown that matches Liralay's, complete with a miniature tiara that catches the chandelier light. The princess drew quite a crowd during her appearance, Isadora reports quietly. Several nobles made pointed comments about proper royal education and bloodline traditions. Meaning? They're testing whether public pressure might convince His Majesty to reconsider your guardianship. Liralay takes Ember, who immediately settles against her with a contented sigh. The gesture doesn't go unnoticed by the watching nobles, several of whom exchange significant glances. Lady Liralay, Duchess Evangeline glides up with predatory grace, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "How lovely you look tonight. Though I confess concern about the princess being exposed to such stimulating environments at such a young age. Children adapt remarkably well to their surroundings," Liralay replies smoothly, "especially when they feel secure and loved." Indeed, though proper development requires more than mere affection. The Duchess's gaze flicks to Ember with calculating interest. Education, training, preparation for her eventual responsibilities, elements that require specialized knowledge. Before Liralay can respond, Ember makes a soft sound and reaches toward the Duchess, not in greeting, but with tiny hands curled into fists. The toddler's golden eyes fix on the older woman with unmistakable displeasure. And then, impossibly, Ember speaks her first clear word. No. The sound carries that same resonant quality as her earlier cries, and Duchess Evangeline actually stumbles backward as if physically pushed. "Extraordinary," breathes Prince Valerius, who has appeared seemingly from nowhere. Such early development of the royal voice, and such decisive opinions. Ember turns those golden eyes on him next, studying his face with an intensity that makes the prince visibly uncomfortable. After a long moment, she makes another sound, not quite a word, but unmistakably dismissive. "It seems the princess has inherited the family talent for reading character," Kieran observes, and there's definitely amusement in his voice. But Liralay notices something else, the way Ember relaxes completely when Kieran approaches, how she reaches for both of them with equal trust and affection. To anyone watching, they look like a natural family unit, which, she realizes with a start, is exactly what they're becoming. Later, after the reception has wound down and Ember is settled in her crib, Liralay finds herself alone with Kieran in the private sitting room that connects their suites. He's loosened his formal cravat, sleeves rolled up as he reviews reports, and the casual intimacy of the moment catches her off guard. "You handled tonight perfectly," he says without looking up. Gracious enough to avoid giving offense, firm enough to establish boundaries. "Lady Isadora coached me well." Liralay settles into the chair across from him, trying to ignore how domestic this feels. Though I suspect the real test is still coming. Probably. Kieran sets down his papers, giving her his full attention. "They'll keep pushing until they find your breaking point or convince themselves you don't have one. And if they decide I don't have one, then they'll try to create one." His expression grows serious. "Liralay, I need you to understand something. What we're building here, this arrangement, it's not just about Ember anymore. You're becoming a political figure in your own right. The nobles see you as either a threat to be eliminated or a tool to be used." The words should frighten her, but instead, Liralay feels a strange sense of rightness. This is what she was meant for, not cowering submission, but fierce protection of those she loves. "Let them try," she says quietly. "I've already lost everything once for doing what I believed was right. I'm not afraid to do it again." Something shifts in Kieran's expression, surprise, admiration, and something deeper that makes her pulse quicken. "You're remarkable," he says softly. "When I first saw you at that diner, I thought I was rescuing a refugee Omega. I had no idea I was meeting someone who would." "Would what?" He's quiet for a long moment, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "Someone who would make me remember why I wanted to be king in the first place. Not for power or tradition, but to protect people who can't protect themselves." The admission hangs between them, loaded with implications that neither is quite ready to address directly. "Ember's lucky to have you," Lirelei says finally. "We both are," Kieran replies, his voice barely above a whisper. Through the open doorway, they can hear Ember's soft breathing, peaceful and content. And for this moment, in this room, they're not a king and a refugee Omega playing political games. They're just two people who have found something precious worth protecting, even if admitting that could destroy them both. The ancient royal library stretches impossibly high, its shelves carved from heartwood and inlaid with silver runes that pulse with gentle light. Lirelei has taken to spending her mornings here while Ember naps, partly to educate herself about royal protocols, and partly to escape the suffocating attention of the court. Today, she's researching bloodline histories when a leather-bound journal falls from between two genealogy texts, landing at her feet with a soft thud that seems too loud in the reverent silence. The cover bears Queen Celeste's personal seal. Lirelei glances around the empty library, then carefully opens the journal. The pages are filled with elegant script, dates spanning from Ember's birth to just weeks before the Queen's death. Day 12 since Ember's birth. The healers confirm what I suspected during pregnancy. She carries not just the royal voice, but the ancient gift, the power to form true bonds, not just with her destined mate but with those she claims as family. It hasn't manifested in our line for 3 centuries. Lirelei's hand trembles as she reads on. Day 45. I've been dreaming again. The same vision, over and over. Ember grown, standing beside a woman with dark hair and fierce eyes. Not romantic love, but something deeper. The bond of chosen family, unbreakable as steel. In my dreams, this woman fights armies for Ember's sake, dies for her if necessary, and Ember loves her like the mother I might not live to be. The entries continue, growing more urgent as Queen Celeste's illness progresses. Day 78. The dreams are clearer now. I see her face distinctly, the woman who will be Ember's true guardian. She works in a pack nursery, tends children who aren't her own with endless patience. She's been hurt, rejected, made to feel worthless. But when she holds Ember, she transforms, becomes the protector I need her to be. Day 95. I know her name now, Lirelei Thornwick of the Shadowpine Pack. The dreams show me fragments of her life, a loveless existence in a pack that sees her as lesser. Years of serving others while being told she's not enough. But beneath that broken spirit burns something magnificent, something that will save my daughter when I cannot. Lirelei's vision blurs as tears fall onto the ancient pages. Day 134. My final entry. The sickness is winning, and my spies report that coup attempts grow bolder. I cannot trust anyone at court with Ember's safety. Too many would use her as a puppet, or eliminate her as competition for the throne. I've arranged for her to be taken to neutral territory, left where Lirelei will find her. Not abandonment, deliverance. The dreams show me that Lirelei will sacrifice everything to save a child she's never met, will choose love over safety, courage over submission. And when Kieran finds them both as he must, as he will, he'll discover what I've known all along. Lirelei isn't just Ember's destined guardian, she's his destined mate. The bond will form slowly, built on shared purpose rather than instant attraction. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be unbreakable. My brother deserves happiness after all these years of duty. Ember deserves a mother who will fight the world for her, and Lirelei deserves to be cherished by someone who sees her true worth. I die content knowing my daughter will have both her uncle's protection and her chosen mother's love. The dreams never lie. This is how it was always meant to be. The journal slips from Lirelei's nerveless fingers as the implications crash over her, Queen Celeste hadn't just hoped someone would save Ember, she'd orchestrated the entire sequence of events. The placement near Shadowpine territory. The timing that ensured Lirale would be the one to find her. Even Kieran's convenient presence on that road. All of it planned. All of it destiny disguised as coincidence. The dreams never lie. Lirale spins to find Kieran standing in the library entrance. His expression unreadable. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough." He approaches slowly, as if she might bolt like a startled deer. "I should have told you about the journal sooner, but I wasn't sure you were ready to hear it." "You knew?" The betrayal cuts deep, though she's not entirely sure why. "You knew she planned all of this?" "I suspected." Kieran stops just out of arm's reach, his scent carrying notes of regret and something else, hope, carefully contained. Celeste always had prophetic dreams, though she rarely spoke of them. When she died and Ember disappeared, I thought. I hoped. "You hoped what?" Lirale's voice rises, anger and confusion warring in her chest. "That you could manipulate me the same way she did? Use my feelings for Ember to control me?" "No." The word comes out sharp, absolute. "I hoped that for once in my life, the universe might give me something good, without requiring me to sacrifice everything else I care about." The raw honesty in his voice stops her retreat cold. "Lirale," he says quietly, "I need you to understand something. Whatever Celeste planned, whatever the dreams showed her, none of it matters unless we choose it. The bond she wrote about, it only forms if both people want it. Consent, not destiny. And if I don't want it?" The question comes out barely above a whisper. Pain flashes across his features, quickly controlled. "Then you and Ember will still have my protection, my resources, my loyalty. Nothing changes except," he swallows hard, "except I'll stop hoping for impossible things." They stand in silence, the weight of revelation settling between them like a living thing. Through the library's tall windows, Lirale can see the royal gardens where Ember plays with her nursemaids, laughing and safe and loved. "She planned for me to love her," Lirale says finally. "Yes." "She planned for you to love me." "Yes." Kieran's voice is barely audible, though I'm fairly certain that part was inevitable with or without prophetic intervention. The admission hangs between them, fragile and momentous. Lirale thinks of the past weeks, the gradual warming of their interactions, the way her pulse quickens when he enters a room, the domestic contentment of their shared evenings with Ember. She thinks of Queen Celeste, dying alone but confident that love would triumph over politics and fear. "The dreams never lie," she repeats softly. "Only if we let them be true," Kieran replies. Lirale looks at him, really looks at him. Not the Alpha King with his political burdens and royal obligations, but the man who makes silly faces to delight his niece, who dances with banished Omegas to show court bullies where his loyalties lie, who offers love without demanding anything in return. "Then I suppose," she says, stepping closer, "we'd better not disappoint a dead queen." When their lips meet, it feels like the final piece of an impossible puzzle clicking into place. The confrontation comes, as Lirale always knew it would, on a storm-darkened evening when the palace corridors echo with thunder and the scent of rain. She's returning from the library, arms full of research materials for Ember's future education, when she finds Prince Valerius waiting in her private sitting room. He's not alone. Duchess Evangeline stands beside him, along with 3 other noble council members, their expressions ranging from determined to apologetic. "Lady Lirale." Valerius greets her with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "We need to talk." Lirale sets down her books carefully, every instinct screaming danger. "About what?" "About what's best for the realm," Duchess Evangeline interjects smoothly. "And for the princess." Through the connecting doorway, Lirale can see Ember's nursery, where her daughter, and yes, she thinks of Ember as her daughter, now sleeps peacefully. The protective wards shimmer around the doorframe, but she knows they won't hold against determined royal family members. The king has become distracted, Valerius continues, beginning to pace with predatory grace. his judgment compromised by personal attachments that supersede his duty to the crown. You mean his attachment to his niece? His attachment to you, the Duchess corrects coldly. Really, my dear? Did you think we were blind? The way he looks at you? The liberties he allows? The authority he grants without bloodline or breeding to justify it? Liralay's heart hammers, but she keeps her voice steady. His Majesty's decisions are his own to make. Not when they threaten the stability of the realm. Another council member speaks up. The other packs are already questioning his fitness to rule. A king who elevates a banished Omega above noble bloodlines, who allows personal desire to override political necessity. What do you want? Liralay cuts through the diplomatic language to the heart of their purpose. Valerius stops pacing, his expression becoming almost gentle, which somehow makes him more terrifying than outright hostility would. We want what's best for everyone involved, he says. The princess needs proper noble guardians who can prepare her for her eventual role. The king needs to be freed from distractions, that compromise his judgment. And you, yes? You need to disappear. The words hang in the air like a death sentence. Not exile this time, but something far more permanent. I see. Liralay's mind races, calculating distances to exits, weapons within reach, ways to reach Ember if this goes badly. And if I refuse? Then we'll be forced to conclude that you pose a threat to both the princess and the king, Duchess Evangeline says sadly. Threats to the crown must be addressed. You'd kill me? We'd arrange a tragic accident, Valerius corrects. Perhaps during one of your rides through the forest. Thrown from your horse, attacked by rogues. These things happen to those foolish enough to venture out alone. And then you'd comfort the grieving king, help him move past his unfortunate attachment to an unsuitable woman. Exactly. Valerius's smile returns. In time, he'd see that we acted out of loyalty and wisdom. The princess would receive proper care from noble guardians who understand their responsibilities. From the nursery comes a soft sound, Ember stirring in her sleep. The nobles glance toward the doorway, and Liralay sees opportunity in their momentary distraction. There's just one problem with your plan, she says quietly, which is, you're assuming Kieran doesn't already know you're here. The council members exchange uncertain glances, but Valerius laughs. The king is in council meetings until midnight. We made certain of that. Did you? Liralay tilts her head. Then who do you suppose sent me these? She reaches into her pocket and withdraws a handful of communication crystals, each one glowing with active enchantments. Amazing how clearly these little devices transmit sound. Every word you've spoken has been recorded and broadcast to the king, the royal guard, and the supernatural council. Valerius's face goes white. You're bluffing, am I? Liralay's voice carries a new note of authority, not Omega submission, but the steel-backed confidence of someone who knows her worth. Did you really think Kieran would leave Ember and me unprotected while you plotted in the shadows? The sound of heavy footsteps in the corridor confirms her words. Moments later, Kieran fills the doorway, flanked by royal guards whose hands rest on their weapons. His expression is controlled, but his scent carries notes of barely leashed fury. Valerius, he says pleasantly. Duchess, how good of you to confess your treasonous intentions so thoroughly. Cousin, this is a misunderstanding, is it? Kieran's voice drops to that dangerously quiet tone that makes even alphas want to bare their throats in submission. Because I heard very clearly you threatening to murder the woman I love and steal my heir. The admission hits the room like lightning. Kieran has just publicly claimed Liralay as his mate, bound himself to her before witnesses in a way that can't be taken back or explained away. Guards, he continues, without taking his eyes off his cousin. Please escort these council members to their chambers. They'll remain there under house arrest until formal charges can be filed. As the conspirators are led away, Valerius struggling against his guards, the Duchess maintaining her dignity even in defeat, Kieran approaches Liralay slowly. The woman I love, she repeats softly. Yes. He reaches for her hands, thumb stroking over her knuckles. I'm done pretending otherwise. Done letting politics and propriety dictate my heart. Even if it costs you the crown? Especially then. Kieran's smile is fierce and free. What good is a crown if I can't use it to protect what matters most? From the nursery comes a soft, babbling sound, Ember waking up, calling for her parents. Because that's what they are now, Lirelei realizes. Not guardians or political allies, but a family bound by choice and love, an unshakable commitment to each other. The dreams never lie, she murmurs, stepping into Kieran's embrace. No, he agrees, holding her close as their daughter's happy sounds fill the air around them. They don't. 6 months later, the great cathedral of the Northern Territories blazes with light from 1,000 crystal chandeliers, their illumination reflecting off the silver and gold decorations that transform the ancient space into something from a fairy tale. Representatives from every major pack across the continent fill the carved wooden pews, their formal attire creating a sea of silk and jewels beneath the soaring vaulted ceilings. But it's the woman standing at the altar who commands every eye in the cathedral. Lirelei Thornwick, soon to be Queen Lirelei. Nighthaven radiates a confidence that would have been unimaginable in the Broken Omega, who was cast out by her pack less than a year ago. Her wedding gown, designed by the realm's most celebrated artisans, transforms her from beautiful to breathtaking. The Moonshadow family diamonds at her throat catch the light with each breath, while the ancient crown of the Northern Queens awaits her on its ceremonial cushion. Beside her, Kieran stands resplendent in ceremonial armor, the crown of the Alpha Kings gleaming on his dark hair. But his attention isn't on the assembled dignitaries or the historic ceremony, it's entirely focused on his bride. His expression soft with a love that makes several noble ladies sigh wistfully. At their feet, Princess Ember toddles in a miniature version of Lirelei's gown, her tiny hands clutching the rings they'll exchange. At 2 years old, she's the picture of royal dignity, until she spots someone familiar in the crowd and waves enthusiastically, her clear voice calling out, "Mama, Papa," in perfect timing with the organ music. The assembled crowd melts into delighted laughter, and even the stern-faced archbishop smiles as he raises his hands for the final blessing. "By the authority vested in me by the moon goddess and the ancient laws of our people," he declares, his voice carrying to every corner of the cathedral, "I pronounce you mate and wife, Alpha King and Queen, bound by love and crowned by destiny. You may kiss your bride, Your Majesty." When their lips meet, the cathedral erupts in cheers that seem to shake the very stones. But more than celebration fills the air, there's a sense of rightness, of a story reaching its inevitable and perfect conclusion. The reception afterward is a glittering affair in the palace ballroom. But the moment that will be talked about for generations comes when an uninvited guest appears at the great doors. Beta Cassius Ironwell stands at the threshold in travel-stained clothes, flanked by 2 other former Shadowpine Pack members. They've clearly journeyed far to be here, and their expressions mix awe, regret, and desperate hope. The ballroom falls silent as Lirelei, now Queen Lirelei, approaches them with Ember in her arms. Her husband follows a step behind, his presence protective but not interfering. "Your Majesty," Cassius says, his voice carefully controlled as he drops to one knee. "We come seeking an audience." "Speak," Lirelei replies, and her tone carries the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. The Shadowpine Pack struggles. The admission clearly costs him. Alpha Draven's leadership has grown erratic. The pack divides. Members leave daily. He swallows hard. "We were wrong. About you, about your worth, about what you were capable of becoming. And we'd like to pledge our loyalty to you, Your Majesty, to serve in your court, if you'll have us." The request hangs in the air, and Lirelei is acutely aware that hundreds of eyes watch for her response. This is more than personal vindication. It's a statement about the kind of queen she intends to be. "You cast me out for saving a child," she says quietly. "Called me defective, worthless, a burden on your pack." Cassius flinches but doesn't deny the accusations. "You're right. Lirelei continues. You were wrong about me. But here's what you still don't understand. I didn't become worthy when I gained a crown. I was always worthy. Every Omega you've dismissed, every defective pack member you've discarded, they're all worthy of respect and protection. She shifts Ember to one hip, the toddler reaching out to pat her crown with curious fingers. I'll accept your service, she says finally, but not your loyalty to me personally. I want your loyalty to the principles. This crown represents that strength comes in many forms, that every person deserves dignity, regardless of their rank or abilities, that a true leader protects the vulnerable rather than exploiting them. Yes, Your Majesty, Cassius breathes. We understand. Good. Lirelei's smile is warm but carries an edge of steel. Then welcome to a court that values character over bloodline. As the evening winds down and the last guests depart, Lirelei finds herself on the palace balcony overlooking the gardens where Ember toddles among the moonlit flowers, chasing fireflies with the delighted giggles of a happy child. Kieran joins her, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. Any regrets? He murmurs against her ear. Lirelei leans back against his chest, watching their daughter discover the magic of a summer night. About which part? Saving a pup who turned out to be a princess? Being banished by people too blind to see past their own prejudices? Falling in love with an alpha king? All of it, not one. She turns in his arms, meeting his eyes in the moonlight. Every choice led me here, led us here, led Ember to the family she was always meant to have. The dreams never lie, Kieran agrees, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. No, Lirelei replies, watching Ember stumble and immediately pick herself up with determined resilience. They don't. From the gardens comes their daughter's laughter, bright and free and full of joy. It's the sound of a child who knows she's loved unconditionally, protected fiercely, and free to become whatever her heart desires. It's the sound of destiny fulfilled, of love triumphant, of a story that began with rejection and exile but ended with a crown, a kingdom, and a family bound not by blood or tradition but by choice. And in the palace behind them, servants are already spreading the tale that will become legend. The story of an Omega who was cast out for saving a pup, only to discover that sometimes losing everything is the first step toward gaining what you never dared dream possible. The story of Queen Lirelei Nighthaven, who proved that true strength isn't about dominance or bloodline, but about the courage to love fiercely and fight for those who can't fight for themselves. The story that will inspire countless other Omegas to believe in their own worth, their own power, their own right to reach for crowns and claim the love they deserve.